We are with peace.
We would have dealt with the U.S. a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not.
Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Israel's military confirms the return of Staff Sergeant Itay Chen remains from Gaza, marking progress in the U.S.-brokered ceasefire. The 19-year-old Israeli-American was abducted by Hamas on October 7, 2023 and declared dead in March this year. Zohran Mamdani has made history as New York City's first Muslim, South Asian, and Africa-born mayor after defeating Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa in a progressive landslide. The Democratic Socialist victory marks a major win for the party's left wing, making him the city's youngest mayor in over a century when he takes office on January 1st. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomes the EU Enlargement Committee's annual report, calling it Ukraine's best in 3 years. He highlights military successes, continued EU membership progress, and EU financial support exceeding 1.8 billion euros. China and Russia have vowed a joint response to unilateral sanctions, with President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang reaffirming strategic ties during Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin's two-day visit to Beijing. U.S. Secretary of War Peter Hegseth confirms that the U.S. military kills 2 suspected drug smugglers in the Eastern Pacific. This marks the 16th strike since September, raising the overall death toll to at least 67 people in Caribbean and Pacific operations. A UPS cargo plane has crashed during takeoff at Louisville International Airport, sparking massive fires. 7 deaths are confirmed, with 11 injured and several missing. 3 crew members still remain unaccounted for, while authorities urge families to visit the reunification center. The death toll from Typhoon Kalmaegi rises to at least 66 people in the Philippines, with the Cebu province worst hit. Floods and 80 miles per hour winds sweep through cities in the country. Meanwhile, a rescue helicopter goes down, claiming the lives of all 6 crew members. China's Shenzhou 20 crewed spacecraft return mission has been delayed after it was struck by a space debris, according to Chinese state media reports. While authorities are conducting an impact analysis and risk assessment, with no new return date announced for the mission so far. Now we start with U.S. New Yorkers have elected Democrat Zohran Mamdani as their next mayor. The self-described socialist appealed to voters by pledging to tackle the soaring cost of living, offering free city bus travel, childcare, and city-run grocery stores. Meanwhile, Democrats have also won governor elections in Virginia and New Jersey. Democrat Mickey Sherrill has defeated Republican Jack Ciattarelli to become the governor of New Jersey. Meanwhile, Democrat Abigail Spanberger has won the Virginia governor's race, defeating Republican Winsome Early-Sears. Spanberger focused her campaign on the state's economy and the month-long federal government shutdown that has left thousands of Virginia's federal workers without pay. Her campaign emphasized immigration and parental rights, an issue that helped term limited governor Glenn Youngkin win 4 years ago. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has reacted to the 3 big Democrat wins today. In a Truth Social post, Trump has said that the Republicans have lost the elections because he was not running. Trump has also blamed the government shutdown for the Republican losses. Meanwhile, U.S. Democrats and former presidents Clinton and Obama have taken to social media to congratulate Mamdani for winning the mayoral race in New York. Now for this discussion, we welcome Spencer Clitry. He's a communication strategist, joins us live from California. Thank you very much, Spencer, for joining us again. Good to see you. Spencer, looking at all this, what do you think has been most impactful to you about all the Democrats who have won in these elections?
Well, I think contrary to what President Trump predictably said, I think the first takeaway from this is that it was a nationwide repudiation of President Trump. His actions in the 10 months that he's been in office for the second time have shocked and horrified much of the country, including a significant number of his own supporters. So, for example, in the state of New Jersey, there was a really significant movement away from Democrats last year and towards President Trump in the presidential election. And we just saw Mikey Sherrill win as a Democratic governor in the same state with the odds against her. Traditionally, New Jersey's a Democratic state, but it had swung quite far to the right just as recently as last year, as I just said. And Mikey Sherrill was following a Democratic incumbent governor, Phil Murphy, who was quite unpopular. And it's unusual to have one governor after another as members of the same party. And Mikey Sherrill is now the third Democrat in a row. So all of those were reasons why people were worried she might not win, at least people on her side of the spectrum. And she won resoundingly. And so did Democrats across the country in all kinds of different states, blue states like New York, with the win of Mamdani in New York City, and purple states like Virginia has become more recently. So I think it's a resounding win for Democrats across the country. And the first reason for that, I would say, is reaction against Donald Trump's authoritarian power grab and his just absolutely massive corruption.
Right. And how do you see this, how might the Democrats' wins in New York, Virginia, and New Jersey affect the political momentum leading into a next national election cycle?
I think it's a very good sign. Again, I think that one of the best organizing tools Democrats could possibly hope for is Donald Trump. He's even worse than he was in his first term. In his first term, his worst instincts were often restrained by people who were Republicans, but who were not corrupt authoritarians and who still had respect for the Constitution. In his second term, he has been careful to purge anyone who shows any sign of independence and hire people who are flagrantly mediocre or outright corrupt, as long as they are reliably loyal to him. And so now that he's unfettered, we see the president he truly wants to be, which is, it is far from too much to say, a dictator. And like virtually all dictators, he's corrupt. And he's corrupt on just an eye-popping scale, just accepting billions of dollars in bribes through his cryptocurrency, for example, and other vehicles. So I think that as he has gotten so much worse and been able to be the president he truly wants to be, a corrupt dictator, we see a much stronger reaction against him. And a Democratic Party that has often seemed to be flailing and looking for strong leadership is unifying and showing some uncharacteristic resolve.
And Spencer, building on your answer, do you think the Constitution or the Constitution of U.S. is not effective enough or powerful enough to stop this rise of such dictators or such as we saw in some of demonstrations like No Kings protests? Do you think that the Constitution needs to change, or there has to be another kind of rules so that the rule of law is stronger to make sure that such a leader is not elected again, or Trump cannot should not be allowed to do whatever he wants to do, such as what we are seeing so far?
Yes, this is an excellent question, I think. The founders of the United States were revolutionarily forward-thinking in many ways, but they were also classical thinkers, and they were still very much influenced by the legacy of the Roman Republic and of ancient Athens, and a tradition throughout culture linking Athens and Rome to their day in the 1700s, in which it was assumed that anyone who is likely to become a leader would believe in honor and would be subject to feeling shame if they were exposed as behaving dishonorably. This didn't mean there were never any dishonest or dishonorable people, but people were filled with shame if they were exposed as behaving dishonorably, at least if the kind of people who ever had any hope of becoming leaders of their nations. And so a blind spot for the founders was, and you can find this in the Federalist Papers, that while they recognized there was always a danger of demagogues, like Donald Trump is, somebody who succeeds by inflaming the passions of the mob, often with nationalist passion and warnings of enemies everywhere that only he can protect them from. They recognized that demagogues were a likely threat. There had always been demagogues, but they also assumed that a president or anybody in national office would basically be bound by honor and would be subject to shame. So they could not anticipate the rise of a man who is entirely without shame and who has just plowed ahead through the most shameful episodes, going back to his early boasting of sexual assault, which was supposed to sink his campaign in his first campaign. But when he showed no shame, it turned out that wasn't going to stop him. And the ability to show no shame whatsoever has turned out to be the Achilles heel for the American constitutional system. So some kind of, unfortunately, legal reform is required to stop this sort of thing from happening again. But also I think America has to address the moral failure of the country, that the people of this country were so lax in fulfilling their duties as informed citizens that they allowed somebody like this to succeed. So it can't just be a legal solution. I think that Americans have to rediscover what it is that truly makes the country great and find themselves inspired enoug）by that to want to defend at least minimal standards for who gets to be their leaders.
Right. Building on that, one of Mamdani's progressive agenda was, I think, education, if I recall correctly. Do you think Mamdani's progressive agenda realistically address New York City's economic inequality, housing crisis, public safety concerns, and also the free bus services? Or do you think, or will it face resistance from established political and business associates in New York?
It'll certainly face resistance, but I think it also is unrealistic. The mayor of New York City does not have infinite power, and despite the soaring promises that Mamdani was making during his victory speech this evening, reflecting the promises he was making during his campaign, he will not have the power to enact the structural reform that, not just in the city of New York, but really at the national level, to enable that kind of transformation. Perhaps that's not surprising, because he is, after all, a democratic socialist, and democratic socialists believe in radical structural change of the entire country. And while I like a lot about Mamdani, I like his youthfulness, I like his undeniable talent at politics, I like his optimism, I like the way he reaches out to all kinds of different people. I think that going forward, the tension between democratic socialism and the liberalism that defines the Democratic Party is going to be very difficult to resolve. And I think that many voters who are attracted by the positive characteristics I just described are going to be disappointed when it turns out he's not able to deliver on those promises, or if he were to deliver on them, it would require such radical change. They would find they would not be able to support that kind of radical change.
Right. Thank you very much, Spencer, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on to Middle East. Israel's military confirms the return of the remains of Staff Sergeant Itay Chen from Gaza, marking another step forward in the first phase of the U.S.-brokered ceasefire deal. The 19-year-old soldier is identified as an Israeli-American soldier who was abducted by Hamas on October 7th, 2023 and was officially declared dead in March this year. The IDF has expressed deep condolences to his family and reaffirmed its commitment to bringing all deceased hostages home. On 4th October, remains of another hostage were returned as Hamas continues to hand over bodies under the ceasefire that began on October 10th last month. Now we welcome back Spencer Critchley. He's a communication strategist, joins us live from California. Thank you very much, Spencer, for staying with us. Now looking at this, while U.S. brokered ceasefire, the fragile ceasefire holds on somehow. How do you see this as an American, that American government, while on shutdown and a lot of domestic issues still unresolved and pouring in or increasing every day, you see U.S. is doing all this outside of U.S. How do you see it?
The situation as regards the situation in the Middle East in particular?
Yes.
Well, you know, this cramps the ability of the United States government to fulfill all its functions, but many of the most critical functions continue even during a shutdown. It is a shame also that the attention of this administration is so easily diverted from one thing to another. And so this makes me wonder how well this whole peace process is going to continue going into the future. I don't want to slight, however, the accomplishment already in achieving this ceasefire and the return of the hostages. There is essentially nothing about Donald Trump that I think makes him fit for office, but I don't think it's intellectually honest to pretend that he never accomplishes anything. And I think we have to acknowledge that he did manage to accomplish something very significant in bringing the parties together to achieve the ceasefire and the return of the hostages. That said, knowing his character and knowing his supreme self-interest and lack of any serious interest in the fates of any of the other people involved in this or any other issue, I don't have a lot of confidence going forward. I think that any further success in this area will depend on whether or not Donald Trump's momentary self-interest happens to align with achieving a result that works out well for other people. For example, the people of Gaza, the West Bank, Israel, and the Middle East. If his self-interest happens to align with that self-interest, then more good things can happen. But if it does not, then who knows what might happen.
And building on that, what do you think, what role should United States play moving forward in ensuring that both sides uphold their commitments under the current ceasefire deal, phase 1?
Well, again, you know, this is an area where while Trump's bullying approach to just about everybody is normally counterproductive at best, that doesn't mean it never works to make it clear to people what it is you expect them to do in exchange for any kind of support or cooperation from the United States. And sometimes it is necessary to lay down the law, so to speak, and I think that has been helpful to some extent, at least, with Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as Hamas and Iran and the other bad actors in the Middle East who are helping to perpetuate this seemingly endless conflict and suffering. But more realistically, a more comprehensive approach is required, as it has always been required. It won't work simply to make threats to people and to wave around the big stick, as it were. there needs to be a solution to the legitimate needs of the Palestinian people and an end to their suffering, which is going to require the participation of multiple actors, not just the United States, but other surrounding countries. And there needs to be a guarantee of security for Israel. I believe that, Israel exists. The idea that Israel might stop existing as a Jewish state requires envisioning a massive, at least ethnic cleansing, if not terrible violence and killing on a massive scale. So I think that's where this becomes a fiendishly difficult problem. Much of the problem is fueled by, I believe, a hopeless search for redress of wrongs committed in the past by everybody involved. And I think that the way forward is going to have to involve accepting that different kinds of people are sharing the same territory as they have managed to share it in ages past, and they're going to have to find a way to share it going forward into the future.
Right, and Spencer, building on that, do you think, what's your analysis on the fact that even though all the things you have rightfully mentioned, that the problems still do exist, and without a long-term solution, the talks to move to phase 2 are going on? How do you think that, is this a right place or right situation, or is this the time to move to phase 2, or the talks about phase 2 to continue while phase 1 is not holding on properly, and also a lot of issues that you've mentioned still exist?
Yes, and this is, of course, a key element in why Trump was, or at least felt empowered to claim a total victory early on, was by ignoring all the truly hard parts of this, which is resolving these issues that have defeated so many people coming at them from the United States, as well as people from Israel, from among the Palestinians, and from the Arab world. And those hard issues remain unresolved. Now, again, I don't want to slight the very significant achievement of the ceasefire and the hostage return, but both the Israelis and Hamas and other actors in this have been vague at best as to how committed they are to following through on the rest of the plan, which in many ways is not different from the plan being pursued by the Biden administration or being pursued by other administrations going back many administrations. And there are reasons why it has been this hard. And as I say, I think that the only way this ever gets resolved is for everybody involved to recognize that there cannot be a final victory that's achieved simply through one side triumphing through military force. It's not going to happen through Israel defeating every threat in the region, because you can never do that permanently. And it's not going to happen by the Palestinians rising up and destroying the state of Israel. That's not going to happen either. And to the extent that anybody on either side thinks it's going to, they're just going to perpetuate the suffering of everybody on both sides of the conflict, and just continue something that's obviously gone on far too long and far too unnecessarily.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Spencer Critchley for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. The United States Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has said that U.S. forces killed 2 people in a strike on an alleged drug smuggling boat in the eastern Pacific Ocean. Hegseth has stated that intelligence has confirmed the vessel was engaged in illicit narcotics smuggling, transiting along an unknown narco-trafficking route, and carrying narcotics. Meanwhile, Brazilian President Lula da Silva has stated that he hopes there will be no U.S. ground incursion into Venezuela, and reiterated his willingness to mediate between these two nations. U.S. President Donald Trump has launched a major military deployment in the Caribbean for anti-drug operations that have already caused dozens of deaths. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has been accused by Trump of leading a drug cartel and insisting that Washington's true aim is to impose regime change in Caracas and seize Venezuela's soil. Now for this discussion, we welcome Irina Zuckerman. She's a senior journalist, joins us live from New York. Thank you very much, Irina, for joining us again. Good to see you. Irina, looking at this, what do you think is U.S.'s interest in counter narcotics operations in the Caribbean, as well as the soaring tensions with Venezuela?
I think there is some talk about potential displacement of the Maduro regime. Let's not forget that the U.S. announced a bounty for Maduro's head. There's been negotiation over U.S. hostages in the past. There's been an escalating concern over fentanyl being smuggled with the help of some of the Venezuela-backed cartels, and generally concern about Venezuela's spread of anti-American influence all over the Western Hemisphere and the destabilizing impact of the Maduro regime. It's also no coincidence that the Nobel Peace Laureate this year was Maria Machado. She is the leader of the Venezuelan opposition. Everything seems to be lining up. That said, the pretext for all of this appears to be this anti-drug operation. The Maduro regime is in no condition to confront the U.S. Directly. In fact, it seems that in the event of a land incursion or any sort of other military effort, there isn't much Venezuela can do directly. It would certainly, however, raise tensions, and it would be used in anti-American messaging. It's also unclear just the rate of success for the anti-drug operation, since the administration has not revealed much in terms of evidence that these strikes have indeed led to any sort of capture or destruction of fentanyl or other drugs. There's a presumption that the boats are drug boats based on the fact that some of them appear to be costly and consistent with the type of boats used by drug cartels. But it's also unclear why, in that case, the individuals who had been captured in one incident were repatriated home and not arrested for investigation. A lot of questions there, and at the same time, there are also rumors hiding about the potential strikes inside Mexico, not coordinated with the government there either. It's not clear whether there's going to be any replacement of any governments or regimes or any airstrikes at all. All we know about is that President Trump is currently considering different options for Venezuela that range from additional sanctions to some sort of military action. Of course, if the Maduro regime is successfully removed and a liberal democratic government is elected, it would benefit the entire region. But on the other hand, if such an operation is not successful, as it has not been in the past with Fidel Castro in Cuba, after many efforts by CIA, it could discredit U.S. tremendously, and it could actually damage any potential for future efforts to oppose such regimes.
With that, I would like to thank Irina Zuckerman for joining us and sharing that insight as a senior journalist all the way from New York. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is welcoming the latest annual report from the European Union's Enlargement Committee, calling it Ukraine's best result in 3 years. The EU's Commissioner for Enlargement says Ukraine has demonstrated its commitment to its EU path. Zelensky, in his address, has stated that every Russian setback in Pokrovsk, Dobropilya and Kupiansk contributes to Ukraine's ability to defend its state, its people, and its independence. He has also said that even during wartime, Ukraine continues to move forward in its EU membership negotiations. The European Council has also approved more than 1.8 billion euros in support for Ukraine as part of a broader facility providing up to 50 billion euros through 2027. This is what Volodymyr Zelensky has said.
Російська армія вже не вперше була змушена переносити терміни захоплення, які вони собі там намалювали щодо нашого Покровська, щодо нашого Добропілля. І кожна російська втрата саме на цих напрямках, на Донеччині, на межі з нашою Дніпровщиною і також в Куп'янську, кожна російська втрата – це внесок у нашу здатність захистити державу, захистити наш народ, нашу незалежність. Символічно, що є сьогодні дійсно найкращий за 3 роки звіт Єврокомісії. Найкращий за 3 роки результат України. Це додає нам всім мотивації, всім українцям, коли Європа визнає нашу спільну роботу. Україна все робить, щоб отримати членство в ЄС. І у час війни, в час складних боїв наша держава рухається вперед, тільки вперед в перемовинах щодо членства.
Now we move on to our next news. A UPS cargo plane has crashed during takeoff at Louisville International Airport, U.S., igniting massive fires. Authorities confirmed 7 deaths so far, with the toll expected to rise. At least 11 people are being treated so far for injuries, and several others remain missing. The aircraft was carrying approximately 38,000 gallons of fuel, and it exploded on impact, sending flames towards nearby businesses. UPS reports that 3 crew members were on board and are still unaccounted for. According to the FAA, Flight 2976 was bound for Hawaii and crashed around 5:15 p.m. local time. Officials urge people searching for loved ones not to visit hospitals, instead directing them to Reunification Center at the Louisville Metro Police Department's training academy. Mayor Craig Greenberg has confirmed the death toll aligns with preliminary reports, noting that 4 of the fatalities were not on the plane, while the 3 crew members are expected to be added. Rescue operations continue amid the ongoing fire. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.